like to ask Kim, Danielle, and Tiffany to join me on stage for the last presentation. And we've been talking a lot about digital engagement between, engagement with partners and many different type of engagement. Now we're talking about engagement with a brand. So I'm very happy to see you again,
Yes,
Kim. I think it was 2 years ago you started to talk to me about this amazing project with collective that you were initiating. And I mean, you've been there for 18 years now, and you've been doing a lot on the brand. So it's interesting to hear you presenting today with your agency. So I let you present, and then we will hear from Danielle.
Great. Hello, everyone. I'm very glad to be able to talk to you about what we've been up to at MoMA for the past few years. And Tiffany, Rolfe from Co-Collective has been with us, with a team of people, looking into what our purpose is, what our ambition is, what our goals are, how we're going to behave, how we're going to speak, and what we're going to do. So MoMA's never undertaken a project of this magnitude before, and we have a new building expansion coming up towards the end of 2019. And whenever there's investment in architecture and buildings, it's a good time to take stock of who you are and what you want to be and how you want to present yourself to the world. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And
get the clicker.
Get the clicker, yes.
So we're going to do this really fast, but it was not a fast process. We've got about 20 minutes to take you through it. And, really we've been working together for almost 2 years. It was an intense 6-month period, and then a lot of, building out through the organization over the last year and a half. So this makes it seem easy, but it was not. It was a challenging but amazing and rewarding project. So we're excited to take you through some of that. So some of the things we're talking about today, some of the research that went into it, the strategy that we landed on, what MoMA's new purpose would be, and a lot of the innovations that Kim's been able to start to implement. So there were some goals of this project, and it was called an identity project. It's interesting because coming from the world of working with brands and other things, I usually talk about branding a lot, and that was a word that was not allowed in the organization. And what I realize is it's a little bit of I think a dirty word. And so, taking on this notion of identity, it really is about helping an organization really get to the core of who they are and how they behave in the world. So we didn't use that word brand, but we still were able to embrace a process that I think, I had taken other organizations and brands through. Along the way, we wanted to make sure that the offering of what MoMA is about and does in the world was very clear, that there was a newly defined and an updated purpose, and that was apparent to the organization and people in the world. That the museum itself and the experience overall was more navigable. How do we help people really get to the things they want to get to and understand how to navigate? And then retain flexibility, as we know, and all of you, deal with every day. There's so many different types of art and experiences and people, and how do we make sure that this new identity that we're, gearing towards is actually something that's flexible for a lot of different things. I don't know if you want to add any more to that.
Nope.
So some of the things that we worked on was that, the internal, who are we, and what do we want to then, embody, so that then ultimately externally it is how we act. And the public perception really is driven more about, how the organization will behave and the experiences they offer than just by a name or a new identity. I think sometimes we can mistake changing a logo, changing, refreshing a branding as changing an organization. And I think working together, we were able to go much deeper than that and really change how the organization internally would work and manifest itself. At Co, where I work, we talk about this a little bit differently. I know we talk about storytelling. We like to talk about it as story doing, and that's really that at the heart of great organizations. It's really what they do in the world, the experiences that they put out there through a core purposeful story, and it's best delivered through those actions or what they do versus what they say. And then ideally, the more those are, really experiences and actions, you don't then have to do as much, paid communications and things like that because you're living it. We talk a lot about iconic innovation, and these are these could be experiences, events, they could be business models, they could be an amazing culture change that you do that really help make what your purpose is true to yourselves and true to people in the world. There were a lot of stakeholders in this. We wanted to make sure, the way that we work very collaboratively. We almost become part of the organization where there's a really blurred line. Everything that we did together. We had boards on walls. We met weekly. We talked to lots of people, both inside the organization, outside the organization, to really understand, what this organization stood for. So staff, the board, members of MoMA, artists, donors, neighbors, New Yorkers, because we're such an institution within New York itself, and of course visitors. So just some of the stuff we did. I think there were over 50 interviews with staff, trustees, artists, agencies, architects of the new structure. We had input sessions with each department, which had some shared philosophies and some very different philosophies. So trying to bring those together and understand what is it at the core that is shared among them all, even though they look at it from different lenses. Focus groups with young New Yorkers, members, and artists, like how can we understand what they need and what they want, and so we can engage them in new ways. Ethnographic studies showing MoMA visitors, and we created amazing experience maps of different kinds of people, and how they engaged with MoMA in different ways, and followed them around the museum, things like that. We did a wide staff survey because we believe that it isn't just really a marketing department assignment. It's really for the whole organization, and so it can't live in the minds of just a few people. It really has to be embraced and owned by everyone, and especially some of the people that are working inside, MoMA, inside the actual physical location where they are interacting, engaging with people, and they are the true sort of representation of the brand. Press, we looked out in the world, what are the stories people are writing, looked at what some of the experiences were, lots of data that existed, and then other museums and cultural experiences out there. So lots of work went into being really well informed. So we try to get and help organizations, and in this case MoMA, get to their core purpose. So in this case with these guys, we figured out, and wanted to look at like who they really were today, who they were in the past, but what they really want to be. So the 4 quadrants or inputs of that are the who, that's obviously MoMA. What is the environment? What is the culture, the stage, the world that MoMA is operating in today and needs to understand to be the most relevant to people? What we stand for, or who are we for? And then what are we against? I think when you have a purpose in the world, you also need to know what you're fighting against or what you don't want to have happen. So MoMA obviously is a force in modern contemporary art, one who actually in a lot of ways completed their original mission, which was really to popularize and legitimize modern art. Like modern art, obviously an amazing, one of the strongest arts today, and how do we though make that relevant today with it being out there so prolific? What is the role that MoMA can still play in modern contemporary art today? The environment that we're in is one where people have never had more access to visual stimulation, art experiences, yet we are living a bit in a filter that we've created for ourselves, whether that's our Facebook pages, whether that's the people and things we follow, as we've even seen in our U.S. election. We are a bit in a bubble, and I think there's an opportunity in this world to be a provocative authority, to put forth experiences and new thinking that they might not get exposed to in their limited sort of filter bubbles. And then who are we for? I think we broadened this out a bit. I don't know if before we would have, as MoMA, I say we, but I kind of think of it as collective, if we're for everyone at that time. But we really, came aligned with this idea that we do want to be for everyone. And it's a mindset, though, like everyone's seeking new creative thinking. And that could be, all backgrounds, demographics, everything. And I think in particular, though, we wanted to focus on young adults, so being relevant for young people today. New Yorkers, we started in New York and made helped make it an art institution in and of itself, and we can't let that go. And so we need to really be for New Yorkers and support them. And then culture producers, which include artists, but I think part of what we discussed a lot is widening the aperture of what an artist can mean today, so that way we can embrace all types of artists and cultural creators that are out there that can get something from the art that we have. And then what are we against? And lots of debates went into all these different quadrants, and there's a lot of work behind each one of them. Again, it seems kind of simple and to the point, but a lot went there. And I think what we landed on was really this idea that we're against any barriers to meaningful encounters with art. What will get in the way of having a really truly impactful impact and meaning through that art. And in some cases, we might have been, as MoMA, creators of some of those barriers, and we had to look inward and see what were we doing that were preventing meaningful encounters with art. So I think that was a really amazing way to embrace that and go, like, let's look at ourselves and let's look at the things we're doing, and are we creating any barriers?
And I think that's the real beauty of having an outside perspective, because I think all of you who worked in museums, you've had internal meetings where you talk in circles about, well, we could do this and we could do this, and what if we did this? And I think having the clarity of your guys deepening your knowledge of what we're offering, that was really helpful.
Great. So we landed on our ambition to be the most engaging museum of modern contemporary art for everyone. Again, a simple statement, but there were a couple of words in there that I think were really important that were shifts. And this idea of moving just from appreciation of art to really being about engaging, engaging people, like letting them in, having two-way dialogues. And so it was really opening up, and it was changing the approach to the kinds of experiences and the behaviors that we would show. And then for everyone, like, how do we make sure that everyone that engages with us is getting something from it? And that might mean we need to create different kinds of experiences, different ways of learning, different ways of connecting that we might not have been as open to in the past. And hidden within that, the Museum of Modern Art, it was embodied in that statement, so we could kind of see ourselves through the broader statement that we created. There were some, if that's like what our ambition is and what we're trying to do, there's a how. We talk a little bit about like action principles, or these are kind of the behaviors that we need to follow to help make that true. And we think this is a little bit of a circle that you can enter in through different ways, and they all sort of are self-fulfilling. But the idea of being a dynamic program, I'll click ahead a little bit and then go back. Instead of just being a place, I think often we would define ourselves as a location or a building. We wanted to make sure we were an idea, at the center of that being our collection, but that it's an idea that can exist across platform. It doesn't have to be about one building, and I think that was really important to reframe, like, we're not just a place, but we're an experience, and we can be anywhere, and this bigger idea of what we are. And that we're open to everyone. We need to be more welcoming. We need to start dialogues with people in all the different communities around us and in our city, and seeing differently. Like, I think appreciation of art is one thing, and preserving it, protecting it. But the idea of like, what are we for people? And I think this idea of seeing differently and helping people to see differently, making it exciting to open people's minds through what they see, is really what we do for people every day, and something that should drive a lot of the experiences. And so it becomes this sort of nice cycle where if you help someone to see differently, they might actually create art and put it into the collection. And if you maybe be able to interact with MoMA in different ways through it being an experience on a different platform, open to everyone, we'll have the opportunity to create all new people that will ultimately have appreciation for art if we allow ourselves to be more engaging and open. And so from that, we worked a lot with Kim and her team, ideated concepts, experiences, but really did it with them so that they owned it and started to create based on this new ideas, new experiences. And so Kim's going to share a little bit of how this then evolved into doing and making changes.
Great. Yeah, so the big question everybody had was, so what is this going to mean? What are we going to do? What's the next step? And then the torch was passed to our internal team to make it real. And one of the first things we talked about was what is our structure and what is MoMA? MoMA is a building in Midtown Manhattan that's known around the world, but it's other things too. It's a facility in Long Island City, Queens, a former public school, MoMA PS1, that shows contemporary art and does a lot with events and performance and very kind of cutting-edge programming. It's also a website that attracts, many millions more people around the world than could ever physically come to either of those locations. So in thinking about our brand architecture, we wanted to put all three of those platforms on one level. And that was a very controversial decision. And we found that if you can see, that is an actual subway map. And so there is a direct line between our location and our location in Queens. And we thought that was a very kind of like symbolic gesture that we could use to underscore that. And then we developed internal task forces. And to Tiffany's point, we marketing and communications led this project, but it was really important to us that we not see this as a visual identity project, although it will include that down the road. But we really wanted it to be about the core of what MoMA offers, not about the exhibitions that we present, not about the works that we acquire for our collection, because that would have been really overstepping our purview in terms of the curatorial group. But we wanted to have multidisciplinary input into all of these things. So we divided it into 5 major groups. Looking at New York City, our visitation has always been primarily from Manhattan and Brooklyn. There's 5 boroughs in New York. What are we doing in all of them? Artists are, the core of what we do. They're the, if we're the platform, the artists are the voice, and artists are, a very important key constituency. And we wanted to make sure that we were encouraging artists of the future and honoring artists of the present and doing everything that we possibly could. For members, thinking about what does their membership mean to them? Is it just a way to get discounts and early previews of shows, or is it something bigger? Is it something more altruistic? And we've actually built on this member idea and done some more research, and we have found that the philanthropic support is the main driver for becoming a member of MoMA, which was kind of a surprise to a lot of people because we spend a lot of time talking about benefits and value. For shoppers, we have a very, very dynamic retail program that's different from a museum gift shop. It has outlets in Soho, 2 on 53rd Street. We are in Tokyo, we are in Seoul, Korea, and we are in online. And the difference with our retail program is that our curators are involved in approving every product. So every product that goes into that store is considered, meeting a design standard that is maybe it's not going to go into the collection right now, but maybe it would someday, and that's a differentiator with other museum retail. And then the responsive museum. We wanted to look at the total visitor cycle, the ethnographic studies we did with Tiffany and the team looking into where the barriers were. That was a very helpful exercise in finding out that people needed more information before, they needed more information when they got there, and there was an opportunity for engagement after they left. So those projects are underway. Now, when you think about everyone, that is our top level altruistic goal, and we kept asking in marketing communications, well, that's impossible. How can you talk to everyone around the world, all ages? And we had to break it down in a little bit more of filters. So we came up with this, which is super helpful for my team, about New Yorkers, young people, and the creative community. And the reason we like it is that it's flexible enough that it gives us guidance when we're considering a partnership or a project or even a media buy or thinking about a particular exhibition. We think about these lenses, and they're flexible because some of them are global, creative community and young people from around the world. Some of them are specific to New York. And with a blend of these, we feel that we are going to focus our limited resources on the people that really matter very, very strongly to us. At the same time, being accessible to everyone from a 2-year-old to a 95-year-old or a person with disabilities, etc. So the sweet spot of all of that was right in our backyard. The people in New York, there are many of them who are already working in creative fields, and how are we engaging with them, because they not only are kind of visiting MoMA and participating, but they're also taking active inspiration from our program in their work. And they told us that they see this as having a direct influence on what they're doing. So to the story doing point, we thought that was really very unusual. And before we hired Co-Collective, we talked about with other agencies, and a lot of agencies came in with the storytelling idea around communications and graphic design, advertising, and it felt, this approach about what do you do felt very fresh to us. So we started doing some things, and to make people less nervous, we found a secret. If you use the word pilot, people are much less nervous. And you say, hey, if it doesn't work, we won't do it anymore. So we had a category of membership that was called the artist membership. It was our lowest level, it was $50. The regular level is $85. And in order to prove that you were an artist, you had to show that you had a gallery. And when we looked at who is an artist, we thought, well, there's plenty of artists who do not have gallery representation. Not only that, but we show graphic design and architecture and industrial design and photography in our galleries. Those people are artists too. So we decided to widen the definition of what we call an artist and make it easier for them to apply. Excuse me.
Need a little water?
Yes, thank you. So we lowered the price to $35. We widened the the universe of people. It's a global category, so you can come from anywhere. And really, all you have to do to prove that you're an artist is to either show a portfolio or a website or a CV or any kind of indication that you're involved in creative work. And this has been a really incredible success. We launched it in January, and we also decided to add a special benefit, which was what we're calling the Artist Member Open House. And this is a night when you can come, as an artist member, you can come with a friend into the museum after hours with other artists. And people felt that this was an amazing opportunity to talk with other artists. We ran tours where we brought them into our archive and showed them our correspondence of artists, letters from Picasso to the early directors of MoMA. And it was quiet. It wasn't a massive evening, but I think it was January 6th. It was a really cold night, and we weren't sure how many people were going to come, and 1,300 people showed up at our door unexpectedly. We said, oh my God, we really have something here. So now we're doing artist member open houses 4 times a year, and the category has doubled since we start, and it has actually not only broke even, it's actually started to generate a little bit extra, which was a real worry. Whenever MoMA's, we do not have government funding, so every dollar we spend is a dollar that we have to make somehow. And when you reduce, pricing like that, you have to make sure that you're going to make it up somewhere. So we made it up. Transactions and experiences, we looked a lot at what the feeling was when you walked in the door. And I'm really almost embarrassed to show you this, but this visual is our current ticket. And it was a new system that the IT department was very proud of. It had a gorgeous back end. It really was much, much more efficient, but this was the front end. And they rolled it out, and then we started getting complaints, and we started hearing about it. We heard from particularly European visitors. We heard from students. People thought it was a receipt, so they would crumple it up and throw it away. They didn't even really know it was a ticket. So we said, all right, you know what? We're gonna redo this, and we came up with a plan to do much nicer tickets. These are about the size of an index card. Shows the width, the breadth of the collection, and we're launching those for the holidays. here is where New York City helped us, but they helped us in such a way that we were already so into the idea about engagement. When this idea came to us from the city, everybody said, jump in. And what it is, it's a MoMA NYC is an ID card for New Yorkers, and it allows anybody who lives in the city to get an ID card that allows them to have a free membership for 1 year at cultural institutions. So we also did an event for them, and we're really bending over backwards to give them, a pathway to get more involved with us. Now, we also did want to learn and use these insights in communication. So this is an ad. On the right, you have the emotional states. We learned that people are moved, sometimes disgusted, sometimes puzzled, sometimes angry, but they're usually not neutral when they leave MoMA. There's something going on in their heads. So we thought, let's tap into that. This is very controversial internally, by the way. I think it was probably the first time we've done that. I don't know when we'll do it again. This was very interesting about the experience. Quiet mornings, we thought, since people are really enjoying the nighttime events, what if we did a morning event? And so this was also highly controversial. We opened at 7:30. We introduced guided meditation. We charged half price. We allowed people into 2 floors of the galleries. And again, we experimented with 4 Wednesdays this October. The first Wednesday we had 200 people. The second we had 400 people, so the word of mouth spread. We had a partner with Flavor Pill, which is an event firm. And actually we had to cap it because people, when it got to the second Wednesday, people were saying, it's getting a little crowded in here. So we capped it at 400 to keep the feeling the same. So Corinne asked me to make sure to talk about challenges, and there were many. I think this project,
it's an intimidating group of people to work with. Let's just say
it was really wild because I think museums are so used to talking about exhibitions and objects and all the kind of like day in and day out thing. But when you step back and say, all right, what is it that we're all about? Wow, was that really hard. And so we scrapped the B word. I did not say it for, a year and a half, except to my boss. It was about, the whole thing about not having it just be marketing. And there were some meetings that we actually stepped back on and weren't in the room so that people could, debate and talk about various aspects of what we did. And, the whole, idea around developing consensus in a museum culture, especially one as big as we are with as many kind of like intellectual leaders, is going to be impossible to make everyone happy. So we found a way that we thought would allow us to move forward and test these things, and that was what we. I think it's feeling like a different place. A few years on, we are working on visual identity, and I just wanted to add one thing. Last week we had a calamity in the United States, and on the day after the election, our staff had a very, very hard time working, and our director was in a meeting, and he was talking about what's the role, what's our mission, why are we here? And this was all exactly what we had been talking about for years. And he said a few new things that people were really, I won't use the word excited, but they were, I think, comforted to hear, that we should be a model of being an open, tolerant, and generous institution, that we should promote and encourage diverse political, social, cultural, and artistic positions so that people of all backgrounds and opinions can find a home, and that these are the values that are essential to a healthy and vibrant society. And what people took away from that was that every day, in every way, there's some decision that crosses your desk that will allow you to kind of like move 1 inch in that direction. And people were coming up to me afterwards saying, oh my God, that was amazing. I feel a tiny bit better. So now we're thinking, all right, do we take our ambition, which was about engagement and everyone, and do we lift it up another notch and say, okay, we want to even do more in the next couple of years. So that's where we're at. Thank you.